Hi everyone, welcome to Chaplaincy 101. My name is Ren Marshall and I am a clinical healthcare chaplain. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the field of chaplaincy, what a chaplain does, what the educational requirements are. I'm going to be talking about clinical pastoral education and seminary and what spirituality is in the field of chaplaincy today. I also have a website called chaplainjobinterview.com. I'll post the link below, but if you are interested in exploring chaplaincy, it's a great course to take. Also, if you're interested in pursuing clinical pastoral education, I'll address that as well in the course. So stay tuned. We're going to get into it right now. A chaplain is a religious or spiritual counselor who provides spiritual and emotional support to people in institutions like hospitals, hospice, college campuses, prisons, or the military. They offer non-denominational or interfaith support, respecting the diverse beliefs and backgrounds of the people that they serve. The field of chaplaincy is growing, so this is definitely good news if you're interested in pursuing a career in chaplaincy. And so, for example, I used to work in mental health, right? But mental health is definitely an epidemic in this country, and it's just getting worse and worse. There's more drug addiction, there's more people on the streets, there's more disparity, like economic disparity, and people really struggling. So we're seeing hospitals their patients, their admissions are record highs. Hospitals are constantly full, especially behavioral health. And this is affecting like all these different institutional environments. So like I said, behavioral health hospitals, regular acute care hospitals, and also we're seeing the prison system growing. And so there's definitely a huge need. And I have been in the field for 10 plus years, about 13 years if you count my internships and stuff like that. But I feel very strongly that these organizations are going to have to create more budget for chaplaincy and spiritual care departments. And I just, in my experience, I'm not seeing budget cuts. I'm not seeing less. I'm seeing more. And it might, happen slowly over time that those budgets increase, but it's definitely, there's going to be more of a need. And for example, like hospitals, regular hospitals have more chaplains on their staff, like now more than ever. So if you're interested in a chaplaincy, it's really good news. I really support people that are interested in the field. It's definitely a call. You feel somehow called to do this work. And that's really what you need to be paying attention to, because that means that's where you need to be. So I want to talk a little bit about the educational background of chaplains. So most chaplains have a bachelor's degree and a Master of Divinity degree. And they also have 1 to 4 units of clinical pastoral education, which is a pretty rigorous postgraduate residency program. So it doesn't really matter what your bachelor's degree is in. If you're interested in chaplaincy, like what I did, I had a bachelor's in philosophy and religion, but like I said, it doesn't really matter. What I did was I looked into doing a volunteer unit of clinical pastoral education part-time, and I did an extended unit over the course of like 9 months. And so I just applied for that after my bachelor's degree and got accepted, and then I did my first unit of clinical pastoral education. And I was just kind of feeling it out, if I liked it, if I could handle working in a hospital, that kind of stuff, if I liked the work, I really didn't know anything about it at all. Like I just had read a little bit online and I thought it seemed pretty cool. So I did my first unit of clinical pastoral education, and then I loved it so much and I loved the people I was working with that I decided I wanted to apply to seminary. So I just submitted, a pretty hefty application, to a few seminaries, got accepted, and did like a 3-year program. It's a full-time 3 years. So it's kind of a pretty long master's degree, I would say. And it also includes a field internship of one of those years. You have to be working in the field. I ended up doing 2. And then after that, I applied to a residency program for clinical pastoral education. So what that is just more units of CPE condensed into 1 year. So yeah, you do four units over the course of a year, full time. Usually get a stipend for it that you can live off of. It's not a lot of money, but you can kind of live off of it if you budget and can work that. So I did my residency program, and then after that, you're basically good to go. The only next step after that would be board certification, which you usually have to have several years in the field before you can apply for that. So I want to talk a little bit more about the Master's of Divinity degree. So it's also called seminary, which I didn't really realize when I was first getting into all this. What is seminary? So it's a 3-year full-time theological degree program, which is a standard prerequisite for church ordination and professional ministry. So a lot of folks there are trying to become ministers or pastors, priests in churches, and then folks like me we're there to become chaplains. And historically, it's a program studying Christian theology, although there are other schools that have interfaith studies programs or are based in faiths outside of Christianity, like Buddhism. And Naropa University is a great example of that. So if you're at one of the Christian schools, which most of them have that basis, the coursework usually includes studies in New Testament Greek, theology, philosophy, church history, pastoral theology or pastoral care, Hebrew Bible, Old Testament, and New Testament studies. And chaplains can also take coursework in pastoral counseling. So you have a certain amount of electives, and so chaplains can kind of try to get more of those classes in addition to the interfaith studies, which is really, really helpful. And if you're at a place like I went to school, which was the Graduate Theological Union, it's like a consortium of many different seminaries all together, and you can take courses at any of the schools, a certain amount. And I was at Pacific School of Religion, which was one of the schools under the consortium of the Graduate Theological Union. So that's where I could jump around, and I really, really enjoyed that so much. It was the coolest experience, just to kind of get those different perspectives from different schools. And then there is an internship requirement so that your ministry skills can be applied in the real world. And it's usually a 1-year internship requirement. I did 2 years just because I liked my internship so much, and I got extra experience on my resume. And that experience I got on my resume in my seminary education really, my alarm just went off. It really, really helped me as I was doing job searches down the road. What is clinical pastoral education? So I remember when I was interested in chaplaincy, I had no idea what this meant. It was very daunting, and so I'm going to try to explain it for you guys to try to break it down a little bit. So this is education for chaplains, usually in institutional environments with supervision. And so I'm going to read something taken from the APC's website. That's the Association for Professional Chaplains. Clinical pastoral education is interfaith professional education for ministry. CPE is to chaplains what residency is to doctors. It brings theological students and ministers of all faiths into supervised encounter with persons in crisis. Out of an intense involvement with persons in need and the feedback from peers and teachers, students develop new awareness of themselves as persons and of the needs of those to whom they minister. They develop professional skills and function as part of an interdisciplinary team. And so that's kind of a little snippet, a picture of what it is. Like I said before, it's usually working in institutional environments. So most of CPE is going to be done in a hospital setting, sometimes hospice, but you're working with a group of peers. So you may have 4 to 5 other peers, so maybe a group of 6 altogether. And those are your peers for the whole year. And you have one or two supervisors, usually one, and they're working with you, teaching you about the theories that are utilized, and you're going out and meeting with people, and say in the hospital, and you're having these conversations with people in crisis or going through something serious. Maybe sometimes it's not always so heavy, but like a lot of times it is, especially if you're working like in a trauma center, which is what I did. And then you're going to be writing up these cases and bringing them to class, and then talking with your peers and the supervisor about, what you learned, your questions, all of that. And so CPE involves weekly presentations on patient case studies reviewed by peers and a supervisor. So you're writing stuff up, papers up like every week. It's quite a lot of work, but it's really fascinating and enjoyable, and you get a lot out of it. So usually people report it's a really rich and rewarding experience. You really bond with your peers, and sometimes people stay friends like for the rest of their lives. Sometimes they don't, but you really make like these more intensive connections with folks as you're doing this work. I said weekly one-to-one supervision. So you're meeting with your supervisor one-on-one. And then there's quarterly academic assignments, papers, and presentations on various theories for spiritual counseling. So you're learning about all the theories, how to put it all together, and all those theories you're learning about help support the work, like crisis theory, family systems theory, grief theory, all of this together. You can pull from what you're learning and help that to inform how you're assisting people. And so that's basically what CPE is. Like I said, it's a pretty amazing experience. Sometimes they're trying to pair people together in the peer group that are coming from different faith backgrounds or cultural backgrounds to challenge each other. Because as you can imagine, like if you're doing chaplaincy work, you're going to meet people from all different backgrounds and faiths different than your own. So that's where they're trying to kind of like shake things up and for inside of yourself, so that you are confronted with you're confronted with yourself, and like, how do you show up, and what is going to be the backbone of your theology that's going to support the work, because the work can be quite heavy in healthcare, if we're talking about healthcare specifically, but in any of these institutional environments, it can be heavy. So you have to have that support, you have to have the theories, you have to have the training. So that's what CPE is. Here are the main professional organizations in chaplaincy. These are the main two. The Association for Professional Chaplains, which was founded in 1988. And so they're dealing with professional standards and providing board certification through the BCCI, which is the Board of Chaplaincy Certification. And that's like the main route for board certification, I believe. There's also the Spiritual Care Association. The ACPE was founded in 1968. They are the Association for Clinical Pastoral Education. And they are recognized by the Department of Education, and they oversee the national CPE centers and provide professional standards of education. So if you're interested in CPE, then you're going on their site most likely and looking at their directory for all the CPE centers in the States. Here are more professional organizations: Association of Certified Christian Chaplains, Association of Professional Chaplains, National Association of Catholic Chaplains, Neshama Association of Jewish Chaplains, National Association of Veterans Affairs Chaplains, and the Spiritual Care Association. So here are some of the values of the APC, which are the basis for spiritual care: dignity and worth of all persons, faith as an essential dimension of wholeness, chaplaincy care of persons, communities, organizations, and systems, inclusivity and diversity, justice and equality for all, and professional competency and ethical practice. So these are just some good values in the field of chaplaincy that many organizations and individuals strive to uphold. So I want to talk a little bit about the history of chaplaincy and changing times. So historically, the field of chaplaincy was dominated by white Christian males, and it came from the Protestant faiths. And that's how the field developed. In 1968, which was, of course, around the time of the Civil Rights Movement, the APC, the Association for Professional Chaplains, was created and sought a mission of diversity. And also there was the rise of secular and non-religious chaplaincy. So this was the increasing secularization of society, which led to a demand for chaplains who could provide spiritual and emotional support without necessarily being affiliated with a particular religion. This paved the way for humanists, atheists, and other non-religious chaplains to offer their services in various settings. Other reasons for change included changing demographics. So this is basically that society became more religiously and culturally diverse, and there was a need for chaplains that could understand a wider range of cultural and religious backgrounds. And then your ecumenical and interfaith movements. So this is just kind of a global recognition of the importance of interfaith dialogue. And then the professionalization of chaplaincy. So this was just basically the establishment of professional standards and educational programs for chaplains, which helped to ensure a more diverse pool of qualified candidates. So all of these things combined, and today the field of chaplaincy is a pretty rich and diverse group of people coming from different cultural and religious backgrounds. And sexual orientations. And so we've moved from kind of that heterosexual white Christian Protestant male into a very diverse pool of people to serve the communities that are in need, that are represented. And it's really cool. It's cool to be a part of that. And I would say if you're in a more conservative area, you might see the desire and representation being like more conservative Christian type of thing, but definitely if you're in like a bigger city area, you're for sure gonna see like lots of different representation. So it's very cool to be a part of this field, and it's wonderful to work alongside people from various backgrounds. It really adds a richness and helps you to question your own theology, and helps you to be challenged in a really healthy way. How is spirituality defined in the field of chaplaincy? So this is a really important distinction, especially if you're new to chaplaincy, if you really don't know anything about the field but you're interested in it. This is a very, very important concept to get. So I'm going to read a quote here. Spirituality has been defined as the dynamic dimension of human life that relates to the way persons, individual or community, experience, express, and or seek meaning, purpose, and transcendence, and the way they connect to the moment, to self, to others, to nature, to the significant and or the sacred. So spirituality is a very wide topic. It can mean a lot of different things for different people. It isn't just religion, and it's not even necessarily spiritual beliefs, although it can be religion or spiritual beliefs. It's more, I think in the field of chaplaincy, we would define it more as the way people find meaning or make meaning in their lives, and it's inherently built into the human experience. So it is that dynamic dimension of human life. And so all of us have, by this definition, have elements of a spiritual life, of a spiritual life. And so even if someone is an atheist and, you know, they don't have any formal spiritual beliefs, we could still do spiritual care with this person, which would mean helping them to get in touch with their resources, coping, how they cope with stressors, with crisis. A lot of times, you know, getting in touch with how your family and friends are a support to you can be an element of your spiritual life. So it's a very wide definition. It really takes it out of just this religious framework. It's not just a religious framework, although it can be. And so it's just kind of a really great way to understand how we work with people as chaplains, how we can be of service to people. And so that is why we are called most often in hospitals like the spiritual care department. and we serve everyone, and this is why. What do chaplains do? So this is a really, really great question. In clinical pastoral education, chaplains learn to work with people in crisis or moments in their lives where their sense of meaning or purpose is challenged or turned upside down. And sometimes this is referred to in chaplaincy as the void, the valley, the dark night of the soul. I know you guys have heard that. Another way to frame it would be living in a liminal space, so sort of an in-between space. Oftentimes in crisis, people are moving from one distinct chapter in their lives to the next. Say they just lost a loved one in a fatal car accident, and you're with them as a chaplain that night. And I've had countless nights like this working in the trauma center at the hospital, which I worked in I've worked in trauma centers for 7 years. A lot of nights like that. So this is where we work a lot of the time. Not always that intense, but a lot of the time it is, especially in those contexts. But you're often sitting with people in that valley, in that dark night of the soul. And so what we're doing there is we're utilizing theories like crisis theory, grief theory, and then another huge thing that you'll hear in chaplaincy is ministry of presence, or having a non-anxious presence. And there's papers written on this, theories written on what is the ministry of presence, or what is the non-anxious presence. And so it's a way you learn in this work how to show up and be there. And of course you have your own narratives going. Like, a lot of times what's coming up for people in CPE is like, who am I to be here? Like, this person is in one of the most important moments of their life, and I'm not good enough to be here with them. Like, who am I? And so a lot of that is what you're confronting in CPE, which is pretty fascinating. That's why it's a really amazing program. But it is, all of that's kind of, it's just mind nonsense BS, and so it's like inherent in every human is this value, is a value of our existence, of our presence. We have value inherent in our existence, and we learn how to share that with people. We learn how to show up in a cleaner way, and kind of work with your own stuff that comes up as well. And so that can just have a profound effect on people's healing and recovery. Just having chaplains be there, hold that space for them. And that's what chaplains do. That's what we do in all types of different contexts. Like I said, often it's crisis. In hospice, I'm doing hospice work now. It's more like end of life processing. It's like existential stuff coming up. A lot of it is existential, meaning of life, reconciliation. Did I live a good life? Am I concerned about what's the afterlife, heaven, hell, theological concerns? And so you're showing up in these places people get sort of stuck or need support. And the easiest way to say what chaplains do is we provide spiritual and emotional support. And so that's kind of like the umbrella. And everything I just said before is kind of more of the nuts and bolts of what that looks like. How does presence help people? And so I have a quote here from a dear friend, Maren Aspas, that is has her MDiv, has also been a healthcare chaplain for many, many years. And she writes, "I think of chaplaincy as being in intimate and vulnerable spaces, that we enter into this sacred space and time with people. And maybe this is a rarely entered space, both for the patient and the people around them. That our encounters with them are unique and rare, especially due to the vulnerability, sacredness, and being a place where one, quote, takes off their shoes. When you have a skillful and compassionate practitioner who can enter into the space where you are feeling alone, feeling vulnerable, etc., it helps you feel like you are seen, you are important, and you, in your experience, have worth." And so it is sort of an element of entering into this place with people. A lot of times, especially in institutional environments and healthcare and stuff, a lot of times the people we work with have never been to therapy. They haven't had the opportunity to sit with someone in the way that we are able to, and that really creates a feeling of sacredness when you're able to share your work with them, your presence, and have that really help people get to the other side of whatever they're going through. How are chaplains helpful on the interdisciplinary team? This is a great question, especially if you are interviewing for a chaplain job. It's a great one to study up on. So in healthcare, chaplains have their own assignments or caseloads, and this supports staff because we are providing spiritual and emotional support to patients and families, and it just helps and supports the whole healthcare system as a whole and provides this multidisciplinary approach where we are addressing the spiritual dimension or the emotional, psychosocial dimension. Chaplains also provide support to staff with ritual or sacraments, like doing Ash Wednesday events, and educational events, stuff like that. We also serve on committees such as ethics, and that's a pretty big one. Ethics is a huge field of study for chaplains and people in healthcare in general. And then developing programming such as bereavement and support groups for patients and staff. This is another way that chaplains support the interdisciplinary teams. I know when I worked also, this is an example, working in the Level 1 Trauma Center, chaplains were invited to patient care conferences in the intensive care units. And so this is where we would be a voice on the interdisciplinary team with family members of patients that were on life support, and having the physician tell the families, realistically, this is where your loved one is at. We don't want to keep providing this care. We feel like it is doing more harm than good, type of a thing. And to just have another, not just another person, but a chaplain there that can talk to the spiritual, existential concerns that the families may have about, like, possibly withdrawing life support. So that's one example of like how chaplains help support the team when we're kind of like all in the trenches doing that type of work, which is pretty intense at times. So chaplains can be a big support to the team members in any institutional environment. What do chaplains do? So in the simplest terms, chaplains help people to ground or find their own stability during times of loss, illness, war, transition, injustice, etc. And chaplains also help with offering non-judgmental emotional support, responding to emergency situations, existential questions and assistance with exploring spirituality, exploring questions about life's meaning, purpose, and the afterlife, navigating religious doubts or seeking deeper spiritual connections, supporting and guiding families through complex dynamics and transitions, assisting with grief and loss around major life events, facilitating connection to coping mechanisms and emotional resilience, navigating diverse religious beliefs and practices while fostering inclusivity, advocating for the spiritual needs of individuals within institutional settings, and assisting with spiritual or religious rituals. Of course, there are more things, but this is just a short list. One thing I wanted to also touch on is in the current modern day field of chaplaincy, as I mentioned, we have moved away from sort of that, like, it's not a Christian field, it's a very diverse religious field. Chaplains are trained in CPE, especially not to give advice, not to tell people what to believe. It's really about helping people to find their own spiritual beliefs. and not proselytizing. So that's a huge thing, not proselytizing to people. It's not helpful, and it doesn't bring about real transformation. People have to find their own way of thinking about it. But one of the spiritual interventions I will do in chart notes is very simple. I'll just say provided spiritual conversation. And that is basically when I just talk to people, and I've learned how to ask open-ended questions. If people are wanting to ask me questions about spirituality and what I think, and that's an opportunity for me to kind of turn that question back on them, and see if they can explore it. Because oftentimes when people ask you a direct question like, what do you think, they really just want to talk about what they think. So that's how you can be of service as a chaplain in a really, really profound way, make a big impact, is to really listen and see, what they have. And it's also like what they have, see what they believe. And sometimes those beliefs can be as simple as, I believe in my friends and family. Okay, well, let's start there. That's a great place to start. Let's just stay with that and pull out some more values, and what is it about that, that means so much to you. And that can be a place where people can find a lot of grounding, and that's what we're trying to do. Not my grounding, but I want them to find theirs. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for listening to this talk. I have a website called chaplainjobinterview.com, and it's basically a course I teach on helping folks if they're interviewing for a chaplain job. Kind of a rundown presentation on how to study up and the questions that might be asked and how to kind of start to think about interview questions. So if you are interested in chaplaincy, even if you're interested in doing a CPE interview, I do talk about that in my course as well. So please check out my website. If you guys have any questions at all, or if there's a certain topic you'd like more content on, please let me know. And I am so happy to be able to share this with you and all this work. It's been a beautiful career I've had in chaplaincy, and I hope that you, if you're interested in it, find out more about it. And if you pull the trigger and go for it, I know you're going to love it. Like all of my colleagues, we love being chaplains, and it's definitely hard work, but it's life-changing and extremely rewarding. So anyways, thank you so much. Follow my channel on YouTube. I'll be putting out some more content this year. Take care. Bye.